Question: what encourages you most in your spiritual practice despite your shortcomings? Is it a fire and brimstone mentality towards your shortcomings? Or is it more of a unicorn and rainbow mentality, where everything is peachy and nothing ever needs to be addressed? Either extreme is not productive. Today we're going to be exploring unproductive versus productive mentalities, or judging versus troubleshooting. Judge as a verb means to form an opinion or conclusion about, and judge as a noun is a person able or qualified to give an opinion on something. Okay, that sounds pretty good. Judgy means overly critical or judgmental. We don't like that so much. Judgmental, having or displaying an excessively critical point of view. We don't like that at all. Judgment, the ability to make considered decisions or come to sensible conclusions. We just read that judgmental is a bad thing and judgment is a good thing, so it's a little confusing. Let's look a little further. To pass judgment is to criticize or condemn someone from a position of assumed moral superiority. And to sit in judgment means to assume the right to judge somebody, especially in a critical manner. Okay, that makes sense. For the purposes of this discussion, let's focus on this definition: pass judgment. Criticize or condemn someone from a position of assumed moral superiority. So is the judgmental voice inside of our head our own voice, or is it the voice of someone who has assumed moral superiority over us? Are the voices inside of our head or the voices outside of our head qualified to condemn us? And under what circumstances should one be condemned? And what does it actually mean to be condemned? So let's look at another definition. To condemn is to express complete disapproval of, typically in public. Another definition: sentence someone to a particular punishment, especially death. Let's talk about those voices outside of our head or inside of our head, doing the condemning. So now you've punished yourself or somebody else. You've shook the finger at them or made stern faces at them to show that you condemn them, that you are judging them, or that you're passing judgment. So all's good now, right? Now that you've wagged the finger, now that you've made the face, everything's good. The person has sustainably changed their habits for the better. They've been given all the tools they need to learn what was wrong and how to rectify the behavior. So now you can move on with your life knowing that you have let somebody know how horrible they are and that you condemn them, and all is going to be right with the world. So let's take a moment to talk about a related topic: societal punishment in the form of prison sentences. So in Europe, they have a very low rate of recidivism compared to the United States, which has the highest rate in the world. Recidivism means that someone's a repeat offender. They go into prison, they carry out their sentence, they get out, they repeat the same crimes or similar crimes. They get put back in jail, they get out, they repeat the crimes. So I did a little research. There was a woman at Western Michigan University who did her honors thesis on this. Her name is Madeline Hayden. She said that recidivism rates are almost triple in America than they are in most European countries. The rates of recidivism in the US were 70% versus Norway, for example, which is 20%. She says that the European criminal justice systems focus on rehabilitation, smooth reintegration into society, and humane treatment. She says that their prisons allow for support, community, and autonomy for prisoners. So what does rehabilitation mean? Let's look at that definition. Rehabilitation is the action of restoring someone to health or normal life through training and therapy after imprisonment, addiction, or illness. So of course, this world is in a sense like a prison for us, right? We've chosen to leave Krishna, we've chosen to leave the spiritual world, and we've come to a world that's like a prison. And so we need to be rehabilitated. So I saw a documentary about a prison in Sweden where the prisoners who have been there for some time in this particular prison, if they've been on good behavior, they get to apply to go to this other part of the prison that's actually on an island. Obviously, they're on an island, so they're a bit restricted. But within the island, they get to live in a house with other roommates. They're given a job on the island there. They're given money to, they get paid for the job, and then there's a supermarket there. So they learn how to work, budget their money, cook, and live a regular civilian lifestyle. So that's why they're, at least in Sweden, why their rates are so low, because once these prisoners have been rehabilitated, once they learn how to reintegrate into civilian life, their chances of being a repeat offender when they get out are very, very low. So we're here in this material world, which is like a prison. So in order to get out of this prison, we have to rehabilitate ourselves to our constitutional position, as Prabhupada refers to it, our original position, which is servant of Krishna, with other devotees in the spiritual world, all working together to please Krishna. So the question is, when we are practicing spiritual life, are we rehabilitating ourselves when we come up with issues or shortcomings, or are we just punishing ourselves or others? Or are we just looking to point the finger and feel morally superior, or somehow feel, for some reason, intolerant of other people's shortcomings, where we just cannot stand to see that someone has some faults, they have some anarthas, they have some bad habits, that for some reason we think shouldn't be there, even though we've spent millions of lifetimes in this material world trying every possible way to enjoy. And so obviously we're going to pick up some bad habits along the way. And now it's time to rehabilitate those bad habits, to get rid of those anarthas, to go through anartha nivritti. And so there's a process to do that. And that process doesn't include just shaking the finger at people and judging them and making them feel like they're not qualified to practice devotional service. Rupa Goswami explains in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that the only qualification to practice bhakti is our sincere desire to do so. And so that's it. All of our other shortcomings, they'll be dealt with as we go through our spiritual practice. Okay, so let's define another term. We talked about judging and being judgmental and passing judgment and so on. Now let's talk about troubleshooting. The dictionary definition for troubleshoot is to solve serious problems for a company or other organization, and also to trace and correct faults in a mechanical or electronic system. And so I've applied a spiritual definition to troubleshoot, which I call spiritual troubleshooting. It's to trace and correct faults or anarthas in a conditioned soul's heart and mind. So troubleshooting, rather than judging, should be our guiding principle. And that sometimes has to be coupled with restrictions for extreme cases where a person's anartha is harmful to others. And so we may have to restrict that person to protect others, but that doesn't mean that there's still not a rehabilitation process. So just like you may take someone out of society because they harm innocent people and you put them in prison, but while they're in prison they get rehabilitated. And so that's extreme cases. But outside of that, when people don't need to be restricted, we're basically just working on rehabilitating our anarthas. That's our process. And so if you pass judgment, the problem's not solved. If you make a judgment, you assess the situation, you come to a sensible conclusion to troubleshoot, and then you trace out the root cause and you start working on fixing it. In that case, the problem is potentially solved. Let's take a look at an example where that can be applied. So let's say a devotee drinks coffee. To pass judgment would be to say to yourself, I'm a bad devotee, I should condemn myself on a daily basis. The end, right? That's the end of it. That's how far it goes. And then if someone else were to pass judgment, they would say, you're a bad devotee, I'm going to think badly of you on a daily basis. The end, right? That's as far as it goes. That's it. There's just a passing of judgment. Nothing gets solved. That's the end of the story. So how do we expect ourselves or anyone else to make advancement in Krishna consciousness with that type of unproductive mentality? This is not a loving, compassionate exchange with ourselves or others. And if we judge others, we're making this assumption that they are ready to or have to follow the same standards that we do. And that, of course, completely ignores chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita. And it also ignores the fact that Krishna has given us free will. Prabhupada repeatedly says that this is a gradual process. We're all on our own path. For some people, this may be difficult to give up, or they may not even be ready to try to give it up. That's up to them. They have that choice. In the same way that Krishna gave Arjuna a choice, here are my instructions, do as you wish. And even in the case where someone has taken initiation vows to follow those same standards that we do, and they're unable or unwilling to follow them, that's between them and their spiritual master to be worked out. It's not for us to judge. But if we create a culture that doesn't allow for loving exchanges, right? Rupa Goswami, one of the loving exchanges that he talks about is revealing the mind in confidence. So if I'm pointing the finger at someone and judging them, are they really going to come to me and say, hey, I've got this problem that I'm dealing with. What do you think I should do? They're not going to feel comfortable to do that. They're not going to feel safe. They're not going to feel like you have their best interest in mind. And so if people can't come to us and reveal their mind in confidence, how will the problem ever get solved? We have to make sure that people feel like they're not being judged. We have to make sure that people know that we're there to help them in whatever struggles that they have, or we accept them at whatever level that they're at, just in the same way we expect them to accept us in whatever level that we're at. It does no one any good for us to expect something out of someone else. We should only be focusing on our own spiritual development and how we can make advancement and just be there for others. We shouldn't give devotees the message that it's not okay to have struggles, that it's not okay to not be perfect in Krishna consciousness. We do not want to give that message. We want to be realistic with ourselves and with others. Otherwise, we can fall into that trap that Rupa Goswami also warns us about, of following the rules and regulations just for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. Okay, so now let's talk about a healthy way to address the situation where a devotee may drink coffee. So to make a judgment, I drink coffee and I know it's not good for my spiritual life or my health. Troubleshoot. I drink coffee because I'm always exhausted. Therefore, if I start getting better sleep and do some research on healthy ways to kick the coffee habit, I have hope that I can solve the problem. Tomorrow I'll start working on the steps I need to take to overcome this habit. Or I drink coffee because I like it and I'm not ready to give it up. However, I appreciate that it's a valid rule that is beneficial to spiritual development. When I am ready to give it up, I will take shelter of a well-wishing devotee for help. Okay, let's take another example. Let's talk about japa. Let's talk about someone who has difficulty chanting their rounds. They may have every intention of chanting their rounds, and then something distracts them. So they try to go back to it later. And then again, something may distract them, something on their mind. So they think they'll chant at night. And then they realize it's a little too late for that. So an unhealthy response to that, or to pass judgment, would be to say to yourself, I'm not a good devotee, and my guru will be mad at me because I have trouble chanting my rounds. The end, right? That doesn't go any further than that. Or someone else may say to them, what do you mean you have trouble with your japa? You're totally in Maya and I'm judging you. The end. It goes nowhere. It doesn't help anybody. And all it does is make someone feel worse and worse and worse, and it does not solve the problem. So what would we want to do instead? Okay, so we want to make a judgment. I have difficulty chanting my rounds. Why? I find it tedious to chant even though I know how important it is and how blissful it should be. And then troubleshoot. I'm going to take some steps to resolve this issue by speaking with my mentors and guru. I'm also going to take a look at Nanda's Level Up Your Japa video for more insight. Sorry, I had to put a plug in there. My guru and mentors want what is best for me, and they are here to help me make progress in spiritual life. They are not subject to petty judgment against those they are committed to helping. In all honesty, I do discuss these issues in my Level Up Your Japa videos, so if you want to take a look, I'm going to be putting a link for that. Okay, so in this situation, there's troubleshooting being done, right? That's productive. It's not unproductive. In our first example, there's just judging, there's just condemning, and that gets us nowhere. It doesn't inspire somebody to reveal their mind. It doesn't inspire someone to seek help. But when someone decides, let me figure out what's going on here. Why is it that I have such a hard time with my japa? Why is that? What is your method of chanting that may be getting in the way of you accessing the bliss that comes from chanting? What are you feeling when you pick up your beads and you start to chant? What's your mentality towards japa? We can work it out with someone else. Also, we could talk to them. Okay, I have trouble chanting my japa. Why? And so all these things you can start to think about and then see what is the solution. Okay, so in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 25, it says, "Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, whose minds are engaged within, who are always busy working for the welfare of all living beings, and who are free from all sins, achieve liberation in the Supreme." So we want to take this to heart. A person who is actively engaged in spiritual life in the proper way, they want what's best for all living beings, and they work for their welfare. And Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, the sufferings of humanity are due to forgetfulness of Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend. Therefore, to act to revive this consciousness within the entire human society is the highest welfare work. So let's think about this. It's the highest welfare work to act to revive this consciousness. So getting angry at someone for not following a rule that they're supposed to follow does not revive their Krishna consciousness. Better is to help, and there are different ways to help. One way to help is to simply be quiet about it. They may know the rules already. You may not be the person that they have faith in, that they want to reveal their mind and confidence to. You may not be the person who can help them in that way, but there's another way that you can help. And that is just by being their friend, just by being friendly towards them and making them feel accepted. And there may be someone else they go to resolve the problem. So anything we can do to help revive someone's Krishna consciousness, it doesn't just mean shoving the philosophy down their throat. It doesn't just mean constantly reminding them of what the rules are. It means being friendly to everyone. It means being accepting. And that's the way that we can help people revive their Krishna consciousness. We're there for them. And that may mean we're there for them even if they don't choose us as the person to reveal their mind and confidence. Even if they choose not to follow this rule right now. That's their choice. And so we just want to be friendly to everybody. What we don't want is to be judgy. We should make a judgment, assessment, and troubleshoot. That's for ourselves and for those who come to us seeking advice. And so in this way, we can help ourselves and others make spiritual progress. So I've focused a lot on how we treat others, but this also applies to how we treat ourselves. If you're having trouble in your spiritual life, or if you're not ready yet to follow a certain rule or regulation, judging yourself, condemning yourself, punishing yourself, it's not going to change anything. For those who may have a judge inside of your head, try to find where that comes from. Sometimes it's a subconscious thing. Sometimes we don't even realize that the decisions we're making and the way that we're acting are based on a judge that we're trying to satisfy or trying to keep from condemning us. We may make a lot of decisions and do a lot of things that are only for the approval of a judge that is never ready to approve, right? We may have grown up with somebody who, no matter what we do, they don't approve of what we do. And so we kind of spend our life chasing that approval. And those don't end up being healthy or productive decisions. So if we could trace out that route, who's that judge? And again, we go back to that point. Are they qualified? Have they behaved in such a way that shows that they have our best interest in mind? Or do they have their own issues that are unresolved that cause them to lash out, that cause them to impose their own judge in their own head onto others? And so if we can trace that out, we can start moving forward in a healthy way where we say, no, the decisions I make are not based on that judge, that person who can never be satisfied, who's always looking for something to be wrong, who's always looking to condemn. Let me start doing things that are productive, that actually help me make progress in my spiritual life. So if you have any thoughts about this, please share them in the comments section. And if you want to have a discussion more privately, you can always email me. My email will always be in the description. Thanks for joining me, and have a happy Krishna conscious rest of your day.